What's up, everyone? Today we're looking at the results from the Hartford, Connecticut Regional Championships played in the E Block and on standard format, which is roughly battle styles through Scarlet and Violet. There was over 1,000 Masters Division players at this event, and there's a lot to take away from this event. A lot of different decks. So let's get started. I want to talk about 27 Arceus V-Star decks in day two. If we look here at all of the Arceus decks in day two of this event, most of them were the Arceus Duraludon Umbreon deck, which that came out at Portland Regionals, where Nathan Stratford and Camden Freeze played it to top 8 and top 32. But this deck kind of dominated the event. We have a top 8 placement, 3 top 16 placements, and then 2 top 32 placements, and then a couple more throughout top 64, and a lot more throughout top 128. And then, of course, we also have Arceus Giratina decks. And we have one regular Arceus Duraludon without the Umbreon. We also have one Arceus Curlia and Gallade deck as well. Going into this weekend, I still thought Arceus Giratina was a very good play because I think it's one of the most reliable decks in the game right now. But it turns out that Arceus Duraludon Umbreon was an even better play for this weekend. I know we're talking about specifically Hartford in this video, but we'll also touch a little bit on the Malmo regionals, and that's because Fusion Strike Mew with Alessa Sparkle and Meloetta won the Malmo regionals, and it won the Hartford regionals, both in the same weekend, one in Europe, one in North America. So that was pretty crazy. Also, both playing one Meloetta, one Deoxys, so pretty similar lists as well. We'll look at the lists in detail, but I also wanted to note that about the metagame, that it's pretty crazy that Fusion Strike Mew just kind of came out from irrelevancy and won two events in the same weekend. Before we get into looking at the specific deck lists, the last thing I want to talk about is Lost Zone, specifically Turbo Lost Zone Box. So I think Turbo Lost Zone Box is in the running for being the best deck in this format. Unfortunately, we saw that even though the Kyogre version has a higher ceiling of performance, and we'll see this specific deck list did incredibly well. 5th, 15th, 17th, 43rd, and 109th place, all playing the same exact 60 card deck list. Sometimes the Kyogre variant falls short to Disruption or even just kind of losing to itself in the late game. I really wonder. We saw Danny Altavia versus Luke Smith top 8 streamed, and I really wonder if Danny had just played the Turbo Lost Zone list without Kyogre and without the extra Kyogre cards, and had just been playing a more consistent version with Drapion V. Although Kyogre is stronger in a vacuum, let's just look at that one game versus Luke Smith playing Mew Vmax. Been able to close out the game as usual if he had Drapion, which is a lot less complicated, because we do know that I believe game one on the stream, Danny lost because he got judged and then used flower selecting, and the top two cards from flower selecting were Kyogre and his final Mirage Gate, and you just can't do anything about that. Danny is a great player, but he can't do anything if his last Mirage Gate and Kyogre, one of them are getting sent to the Lost Zone. That's just a scoop. You can't do anything about that. But if that was the Drapion version, although the Drapion V version is less versatile and is overall seen as a weaker variant, if you just needed to get that last knockout to win, or if you use that Drapion knockout, it gets knocked out, and then all you need is one card, Clara, or you need Clara plus a way to remove a stadium. That's a lot more doable when you're digging through cards with Comfy's flower selecting than needing that specific sequence of cards like Kyogre needs. So I also wanted to talk on that because I'm a very big Turbo Lost Zone Box stan. I am also a huge supporter of Kyogre. I love Kyogre. I also feel like sometimes it makes the game more complicated than it needs to be. And I wanted to open that up and talk about that as well. So let's look at the deck lists. The way we're going to do this is we're going to look at the top performing deck list of each archetype, and if the archetype has variants that are discernible enough from each other, we'll break it down to each variant. So we'll start with the lowest. We'll start with Intellion Vmax, placed 86, piloted by Anthony Balco. Let's open this up as an image and see what we're working with here. Looks pretty typical. This isn't a deck that I've spent a lot of time with. I've played a couple games with it, a couple more games against it, but I generally understand the concept of the deck. You're going to use Intellion Vmax's Double Gunner for spreading some damage, Rapid Strike Urshifu for either hitting Fighting weakness in the active or taking multiple knockouts on the bench and active combined. Medicham's Yoga Loop is very strong because it allows you to take an extra turn. You need those Drapion Vs to stand a chance against Mew VMAX. Radiant Alakazam's really cool as well. And then you have a couple techs in there like Cheryl to heal your Pokemon, Echoing Horn to bring other Pokemon back to the bench so you can knock them out. You put easy targets there. So yeah, nothing too special about the deck list in general, but we're looking at every deck that made it into day 2 of this 1,000 player plus event. Now next is Palkia, but we actually have two incredibly different Palkia decks here. The first one is Palkia Curlia, which I don't think has seen success yet in American events. I think we saw this from Japan, but I don't think I've seen this played in North American regionals yet. This is an interesting one. It's at heart, it's a water Palkia. You're going to be using Star Portal to attack with either Moonlight Shuriken or Wild Freeze or Aqua Storm or Subspace Swell. But you also have those Shining Arcanas. And the end game with Kyogre actually works pretty similar to the way the end game with Kyogre works with a Lawson box deck. You're going to go like double Recycler, try to just fill your deck up with water energies, and then use two Shining Arcanas so that you can hit water energies off of those to attach to your Kyogre, and then Aqua Storm and just mill your deck and win the game. Of course, it has other strategies until you get there. You have to take a couple prizes between your Palkia, your Greninjas, your Articuno, take some prizes with those, and then finish off the game with Kyogre is the game plan. And then Gabriel Perez plays 58th. The other way that Palkia is currently being played in standard format, which is this Biberal variant. I featured this in the Rogue Decks video last week. So I talked more about it there, but I do like this variant. I think it's honestly an underrated deck. It's pretty solid. You have Empoleon V that's good against Lost Zone decks because it shuts down Comfy. You have Greninja that's good against Lost Zone decks. You have Palkia, which is just a pretty good beat stick attacker that can also accelerate energy wherever you need it to be. Biberal is one of the best draw engines in the game, especially when Ultra Ball is one of the best Pokemon searches because you can also just use that to empty your hand and draw more with Biberal. And then Starmie V can be good against decks that have a lot of energy on board, like Gardevoir and Lugia decks. Also, if you're seeing Articuno pop up a lot in today's video, whenever I mention it, Wild Freeze does 70. It paralyzes a defending Pokemon. This is really good against Lugia because they don't play switching cards. It was good against Lugia pre-rotation. It's still good against Lugia. So you'll also see it in some Lost Zone decks today, I believe. Next, we have Meridon, and there were two versions of Meridon being played. Jose Marrero placed 85th with Regieleki VMAX Meridon, actually only playing two of the Meridon itself, but let's take a look here. So it plays two Cleansing Gloves. Cleansing Gloves is going to help your Switching Bolt do more damage to Comfies. So if you have one Regieleki VMAX and then a Cleansing Glove on your active Regieleki V that's doing the Switching Bolt, you can swing, knock out the Comfy, switch into Klefki. That's their plan against that deck there. You can also use Zapdos plus Cleansing Gloves, and you don't even need a Regieleki VMAX on the bench, and that will also help you be able to knock out Comfies. But Cleansing Gloves also does extra damage to Mew VMAX and to Gardevoir decks, all the Psychic Pokemon that happen to be in Gardevoir decks, including Mewtwo V Union, all those high HP Pokemon the Cleansing Gloves will help with. But yeah, so this variant is going to be focusing on using the Regieleki V Switching Bolt into Klefki against Lost Zone variants. It can also use the Lightning Wall. So that's why it's heavy on the Klefki, and Cleansing Gloves also has the Zapdos to help with that math. And then we have Adam Reinhardt with Meridon Flaffy at 57th place. This is going to be closer to, what's this card? Ampharos EX. Okay, so they played an Ampharos EX. Image not available, but Ampharos EX made it into a day 2 deck. You heard it here first. So pretty similar to Meridon EX Flaffy decks that we have seen. with the Magnezone V, Magnezone V Star, because the Magnezone V uses the magnetic tension to pull up a Manaphy. Then next turn you use the Electro Star V Star attack from Magnezone V Star to knock out 2 Pokemon if they didn't get their Manaphy back on the board. So a pretty interesting deck. I don't love its consistency and its reliability, but it's a cool deck nonetheless. Next, we have Lawson Hasui and Gudra. Michael Zealy placed in the top 32, got 24th place. So here's the 24th place Lawson Gudra deck. I'm not seeing anything interesting to note except the split of one Roxanne, one Judge. I actually told some of my friends that were playing Gudra this weekend to make this switch as well, because Lawson decks can just set up a pretty convincing board state against you and not put themselves below 3 prizes, or below 4 prizes technically, between concealed cards and Lost Mine, and it's a lot easier now without Scoop Up Net in the format, and also with Gudra decks not playing switch cards. They can set up a board state where they know you're not going to disrupt their hand, and they can just keep their 15 card hand to do whatever they want next turn because you only have Roxanne's. So the Judge is actually pretty important to play until Iono comes out, and then you can just play Iono instead. Next, there were 10 Gardevoir decks in day 2. The highest placing Gardevoir EX deck was 27th, piloted by Hamza Khan. Let's check this out. Playing the One Champions Festival, that's a card that has seen a lot of controversy. Is it worth buying at the high prices, and is it worth it in Gardevoir EX? I'd say it looks like it was worth it here, since Hamza was the highest placing Gardevoir EX player, but I don't think it's a necessity for the deck. Choosing to play Forest Seal Stone over Sky Seal Stone is very interesting because it's going to make your deck work more often, but it's going to lower the overall ceiling that your deck has, because that Sky Seal Stone is going to open up more plays, where Forest Seal Stone doesn't necessarily make more plays possible, it just makes the same plays possible more often. So, it got them the top 32 placement with the deck. Maybe that is enough, and that's what they were looking for. But this is a card choice that makes you wonder, if Sky Seal Stone was there, would they have even gotten that far? Hurt the consistency? Or was Sky Seal Stone, could they have gotten farther with the extra power that it provides? Also, I like the penny because that prevents small while shenanigans from happening. Yeah, if you have any questions about what Lugia deck list to play, just play this one. Reagan got third at Hartford and second at Portland, and then Grant Shen got second in Hartford. So between these 2 weekends, it has 2 finals and a top 4 with the same 60 card deck. I think that does it for me. I think this is just the way to play Lugia. The 1/1 single striker Shifu Vmax makes sure you can get through Gudra, you can get through Duraludon. You could take care of a whole bunch of stuff because of that. So, yeah, this is just the Lugia V-Star deck. I really don't have anything else to say on it. I don't enjoy playing Lugia. I don't think it's very fun, but I do really respect that they played Penny and Collapse Stadium, because that gives you some actual player agency to think about during the game. When do you use those cards to remove a threat from the board? Penny prevents Mawile shenanigans. Next is Mew VMAX Genesect, and the top placing DTE Path version was Luke Smith placing top 4, with the typical 4 Path to the Peak, 4 Lost Vacuum, and just playing the 4 Double Turbo Energy. I've talked about Mew VMAX a lot, but essentially you're just dishing out very good damage every single turn, and playing Path to the Peak plus Judge or Roxanne to turn off the opponent's abilities. Luke also played Oricorio with Lesson and Zeal that prevents 20 damage done to your Fusion Strike Pokemon, which hasn't been seen very often, and I'm positive this made a difference in his games because people have not been used to playing Oricorio. You'd even see on stream people were reading Oricorio because it's actually been so long since that was a normalized card in Mew. And then we have Rowan's first place list, the champion list, with, as I mentioned at the beginning, Alessa Sparkle with Meloetta and Deoxys. Now, Meloetta's Melodious Echo does 70 damage for every Fusion Strike energy you have on the board. I think this was so good because this is inherently a powerful concept. Ever since Mew VMAX released, the ability to go turn 1, draw a bunch of cards, escape rope, so your opponent is forced to send up something like an Arceus V, a Lesser Sparkle attach, power tablet, knock out your most important Pokemon. That was a devastating thing. That was something that made me question the balance of the card game when this first came out, until we had enough cards that allowed us to play around it effectively. Enough single prizer Pokemon in the format, enough consistency, enough comeback potential with things like Roxanne. Deck building has kind of forgotten about this strategy because it was so out of the format. This was so out of the meta for a while, using the Alessa Sparkle version of Melaletta, because we saw that the DTE version was just so good. We didn't need to worry about those turn one plays. But like I said, if players aren't preparing for this, and they just have two V Pokemon on the board, and you go turn one Melodious Echo, knock out your V Pokemon. Next turn, knock out the next V Pokemon with Mew VMAX. Next turn, knock out the next V Pokemon with Mew VMAX, and it's game over. This was a very good play into a field of Arceus decks that just have a bunch of two-prize Pokemon waiting to be picked off. Then we have 25 Lost Zone box decks in day 2, and we're going to check out a couple of these. Danny's, which we already looked at, but also Azul, Caleb Grant, and Byron, or Isaiah Williams. I never have called him Byron Williams before, but that's what his name comes up as, Isaiah. That's awkward. So yeah, they played a deck that was pretty much catered to Kyogre. And what I mean by that is they play 2 Pokestops, no Beach Court. They play Energy Recycler, 4 Energy Recycler, no Choice Belt, no Boss. They're playing Echoing Horn. They're only playing 1 Cramorant. This deck really just says, okay, I don't really care what happens between like turns 1 through 4. I'll play some damage, I'll get a knockout somewhere, but all that matters is I'm going to do Aqua Storm and blow everything up. That's what this deck is focused on. And you can really see that in the way they engineered this deck with the 4 Recycler, 2 Pokestop, because the Pokestops help you empty your deck. That is imperative to the end game Kyogre plan. The Cramorant isn't really needed because, okay, sometimes you'll get a poke in with it, but you don't need that turn 1 attack with Cram to win games with this deck most of the time, because they're focusing on the end game being so strong. So this is like the most Kyogre focused Lost Zone build we've ever seen up to this point. Then we have a top 8 list, Raymond Long playing a completely single prize focused Lost Zone build. And what's interesting is we'll see Articuno in 2 different Lost Zone decks here. So Articuno, like I mentioned, Wild Freeze for the Lugia matchup, also playing Kyogre here. So this is similar to the list that Nick Moffitt played and then Alex Szymanski played. They both used Galarian Moltres. This player didn't really like the Galarian Moltres and wanted to just stick with 2 energy types to make everything more consistent, which I kind of like. So yeah, really, this is kind of just like Alex Szymanski and Nick Moffitt's deck without the Galarian Moltres and with the Articuno. So single prize. Something else I wanted to note is that I saw Andrew Estrada's deck, and I thought Andrew Estrada's deck was really, really cool. So I've been a fan of the Sky Seal Stone variants because of what it can offer, but I've also been a fan of the Forest Seal Stone variants. But the thing I really liked is that he went and played Hawlucha with Flying Entry plus Penny, and also Snorlax. And these are 3 cards that are all very good for the mirror match, because Snorlax is just hard for the mirror match to knock out without putting themselves in a bad position with a 2-prizer on board. Hawlucha is great because of Sableye Lost Mine, and Penny is great because it can give you a reason to attack with a 2-prizer in the mirror match, or a reason to attack with Snorlax in the mirror match, and then pick it up and essentially heal and waste a turn of your opponents. So this just felt like it was very Lost Zone mirror pilled and really prepared for that, while also not really taking bad matchups elsewhere, because you have the Sky Seal Stone against Lugia and the Sky Seal Stone against Mew and the Sky Seal Stone against Arceus. And so the Sky Seal Stone probably put in a lot of work this weekend. We'll also look at John Eng's list, which is kind of an amalgamation of a couple lists that we just looked at, because this is the Turbo Lost Zone variant with Kyogre, with 3 Energy Recycler, with no Boss, with no Choice Belt, but also has the Articuno Wild Freeze for the Lugia matchup, also has the Snorlax, also has the Hawlucha for the mirror match and the Gardevoir matchup. Oh, and also the 2 Pokestop, which is cool that 2 different groups came to the conclusion that, yeah, we want 2 Pokestops for the Kyogre variant. And then finally, we have Arceus decks. Let's start with Let's start with the top 128 Arceus Gallade deck. This had Magma Basin and Delphox V with the magical fire attack. 120, put 2 energy from it into the lost zone, but you do 120 to the bench as well. This is a card that I really have enjoyed for a while, and I'm just happy every time it has some sort of performance. Also playing Charon's Care to heal your Arceus. Two different Gallades. The Dynablade, probably very good against Arceus variants this week since they have a lot of V Pokemon. Nobody plays Dunsparce anymore in their Arceus decks since there aren't a lot of fighting Pokemon around, so this Gallade can put in work in the mirror matches. Then, of course, we have Arceus Giratina, and the one I wanted to feature was actually Locks, so it's convenient he's the highest placing Arceus Giratina. He played Sydney, which is not really ever seen played. This was just like a Fusion Strike, Brilliant Stars, Evolving Skies weekend. Like a lot of cards from those sets really just took the spotlight. Sydney is one of them. He also played Aerodactyl V-Star and hit 0 Lugias throughout the event, I believe. Or no, he hit 7 Mews. He might have hit 1 or 2 Lugias. I feel like he didn't hit any Lugias, though, when I looked at his record. But yeah, so here's Arceus Giratina from Lock in 24th. And then Justin Kulas and Charlie Kerr played the same list, and then Ben Cryer also played at the top 64 with just this very supporter heavy, consistent deck, playing 4 Research, 4 Judge, 4 Boss, just doing what Arceus Giratina does, just keeping it simple, 4 Path to the Peak as well, just trying to make things happen every game. I really like this approach to Arceus Giratina myself. And then, of course, maybe the talk of the format, maybe not the talk of the format, the talk of this tournament is the Arceus Umbreon Duraludon deck with Radiant Alakazam and Hawlucha that just showed up and really took so many top finishes at this event. This one included Volo to discard benched Pokemon V, which is really cool to get a liability off the board or something that's damaged off the board. Also, of course, the Hawlucha and Radiant Alakazam are really important for making math work, putting 2 damage on the bench and then moving one of them to the active with Radiant Alakazam. And that's going to allow an Arceus with double turbo that's doing 180 with Trinity Nova, do 210 with Choice Belt, and then Hawlucha plus Alakazam makes that 220, so you can knock out 220 HPV Pokemon like opposing Arceus, like Lugia, like Duraludon. And that is where we're going to wrap up the Hartford Regionals review today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe here on Celio 2. And if you somehow got here without knowing my main channel, also go subscribe on Celio's network, my main channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.